Have you ever wondered if your mind is truly your own, or if your thoughts have been quietly hijacked by forces you barely notice? It sounds like a plot twist from a psychological thriller, but according to some thinkers, it may not be far from the truth. We live in a world brimming with words, social media posts, headlines, texts, and debates, and they're shaping us more than we realize. They can bind us inside a mental cage without our consent. And if we don't question them, we might never see the bars. Steuart Chase, in his controversial work The Tyranny of Words, sounded the alarm on just how deeply language can control us. But he wasn't alone in his concerns. From the cryptic theories of Alfred Korzybski's general semantics to the everyday reality of clickbait news, the hidden power of words has left its fingerprints all over human history. Language is more than just communication. It's an invisible framework that can guide our thoughts, spark conflicts, or even rally entire nations under a single slogan. The question is, are we truly in charge of our words, or are our words in charge of us? Our world is caught in a constant crossfire of messages. Politicians craft cunning speeches, trending hashtags dictate public emotion, and viral memes steer entire cultural conversations. You might think it's all just harmless chatter, but wait until you see how entire societies have been misled by carefully deployed rhetoric. Rumors about secret operations, manipulative advertising tactics, and behind-the-scenes lobbying swirl around big tech corporations. Could it be that the way we speak and think has been systematically shaped to favor certain agendas? These are the unsettling possibilities we'll explore today. In this deep dive, we'll uncover how a single abstract term can send a population rushing in the wrong direction, how your sense of freedom might be a carefully scripted promise, and why our endless debates about truth may not be leading anywhere useful. If you've ever sensed that there's more to communication than meets the eye, buckle up and hit that like button and subscribe to the channel. We're about to reveal how language can be both a liberating force and an unbreakable chain, and how to tell the difference. Let's break the silence on the words we take for granted. Language is supposed to be a tool we wield, a set of symbols that help us describe and interpret the world. But the moment we forget that words are merely pointers, not reality itself, they gain a grip on our minds. Steuart Chase warned that many of our fiercest arguments are nothing more than verbal illusions, where people clash over terms they haven't even defined. That means we might be fighting over ghosts, illusions conjured by language. And here's the kicker: we usually don't realize it's happening. Chase's bold message in The Tyranny of Words was that words can become tyrannical when we treat them like gospel truth instead of flexible symbols. He wasn't the first to notice. Earlier thinkers saw how human beings can become prisoners of the very language they speak every day. But Chase took it a step further. He insisted that words, when left unexamined, form an invisible chain that binds entire populations. Think of phrases like national interest, economic growth, or the will of the people. We toss them around like they're self-evident facts, but each is a slippery abstraction that can be manipulated into almost any meaning. Now consider modern contexts. Ever read a viral post or watch a sensational news clip where a single phrase blows up online, leading millions to form strong opinions in just hours? That's not an accident. Certain slogans catch on like wildfire. Think of the last time a buzzword such as fake news or cancel culture exploded across your feed, completely reshaping the conversation. Those phrases become mental filters, steering everything we read or hear afterward. Before we know it, we're cheering or raging against a concept that's fuzzy at best. This is the unseen grip. Language used to polarize society without us noticing the trick. And once people are locked into those verbal strongholds, they can be manipulated by whoever controls the narrative. Corporations, governments, or even online influencers can hijack the debate by twisting those powerful terms just enough to gain leverage. The scariest part? When it's executed smoothly, most of us won't even suspect we've been nudged to see the world through someone else's lens. But that wasn't the whole story. The idea that words themselves can spark controversy might sound dramatic, but deep down this phenomenon isn't new at all. Historically, entire regimes rose to power by crafting mesmerizing speeches loaded with emotional buzzwords. Joseph Goebbels, the Nazi propaganda chief, was infamous for boiling down complex social issues into gut-punching slogans. He fused national identity with the illusion of moral righteousness. Once abstract slogans turned into a unifying cry, rational debate vanished. That's the dark path language can take us down if we're not alert. Modern parallels are everywhere. Politicians still deploy the same strategies, although they rarely admit it. After all, the people, patriots or social justice warriors can be painted as heroes or villains, depending on who wields the microphone. Entire movements are triggered by a single phrase that resonates with deep emotions or personal grievances. One might argue it's more insidious today because we're bombarded by content round the clock. Misinformation thrives in this environment, often weaponizing terms that evoke either fear or hope. Even the so-called experts aren't always innocent. Some media outlets have been accused of using fear-based language to boost clicks. After all, fear sells. It's an age-old tactic. Keep the audience anxious and they'll keep coming back for the next alarming update. Meanwhile, the real controversies, the structural problems or hidden power struggles, might go unnoticed, buried under sensational headlines. Accusations surfaced recently about certain platforms manipulating trending topics to shape public sentiment, though nobody has confirmed the extent. Still, it's a chilling notion that behind every trending phrase there could be a hidden hand fueling or stoking the flames. These seeds of controversy are potent because they flourish in the dark, thriving on our collective tendency to treat words as factual representations. You see it in online communities when they rally around ambiguous labels like the elite, deep state, or big corporate. Each label might have a kernel of truth, but without clarity, they become all-purpose villains, overshadowing nuance. And that's how the tyranny of words evolves, from an abstract concept into a real-world phenomenon. Yet no matter how alarming this gets, Chase believed understanding where language ends and reality begins is the antidote. Because once you see how illusions are planted, you can uproot them. And you'll want to do that quickly, because the next section reveals just how deep these verbal traps really go. The phrase, "the map is not the territory," might sound cryptic, but it holds a key to unlocking this entire puzzle. Alfred Korzybski, the mind behind general semantics, famously argued that a word or symbol is not the thing it points to. Language is at best an approximation. At worst, it can be a dangerous distraction. Steuart Chase took that insight and ran with it, insisting that our problem is we often confuse the symbol with the reality. We treat words as if they are the actual events, objects, or experiences. This confusion isn't just a philosophical quirk, it has real consequences. Imagine hearing about a giant looming crisis, say a global meltdown, cultural collapse, or moral decay. These terms can spark immediate panic, but what do they actually mean in concrete terms? Without specifics, we're left with an undefined fear. Politicians, advertisers, and pundits thrive on these vague but powerful expressions, because they evoke emotion while bypassing deeper scrutiny. For example, moral decay could refer to anything from changing family structures to new trends on social media. If nobody pins it down, it remains a shapeless fear that can be molded into a convenient political or commercial agenda. In everyday life, we see the same phenomenon. Love, success, and happiness might seem universally positive, but they can mean drastically different things to each person. Conflicts often arise when we assume the words we use share the exact same definition in someone else's mind. Chase hammered this point, The illusions that cause the most damage aren't flamboyant conspiracies. They're the everyday words we assume everyone interprets the same way. Of course, the real bombshell is that words can be programmed to steer your thinking. Marketers do it when they craft slogans that stick in your head. Activists do it when they reduce complex issues into easy-to-shout chants. Even those self-help gurus, with their catchy taglines, lean on the trick of imprinting certain beliefs through repeated phrases. It's not that words are evil, but once you let them blend too seamlessly with reality, once you start thinking the label is the thing itself, you may as well hand over the keys to your mind. For some watchers of global trends, it's more than a metaphorical risk. It's an urgent warning that entire societies can be lulled by well-chosen words. And as we'll see next, even Einstein's theories have an uncanny way of shining light on how language morphs and shifts in our minds. It might seem odd to rope Einstein into a conversation about words, but Steuart Chase did exactly that. He pointed out how Einstein's theory of relativity suggests that nothing is absolute. Time, space, and perspective all shift depending on your point of reference. For words, it's the same story. A term like power or democracy might look entirely different when viewed from one cultural vantage point versus another. The meaning isn't in the word itself. It depends on who's using it, why they're using it, and who's listening. This is the hidden dimension behind the words that shape our world. Take social media controversies, for instance. One viral phrase can mean polar opposite things in different forums. A single tweet about revolution could spark hope in some circles and dread in others, all because context reframes the meaning. That's language relativity in action. No word stays stable if you shift your vantage point. But that wasn't the whole story. Chase and other critics saw how flexible meanings become a potent tool in the hands of cunning operators. They know exactly how to spin a word to maximize emotional impact. Throw in a dash of outrage here, a pinch of patriotism there, and suddenly a neutral term becomes a rallying cry or a condemnation. Advertisers do it by using uplifting language that might mask real health concerns. Imagine the phrase "all natural," which could mean almost anything. Political parties do it by championing freedom, even if they interpret that freedom in ways that benefit only a select few. Think about recent social movements that rallied behind slogans so open-ended that anyone could read their own hopes and frustrations into them. That broadness can be a strength, but it also opens the door to manipulation. Once opportunists see how language is fluid, they shift the message to fit their ambition. This constant shape-shifting keeps people engaged, but it also fuels endless debate and confusion. If you've ever felt whiplash from how fast a public narrative can change, that's the Einstein twist in action. The meaning you think you're hearing might be entirely different tomorrow, especially when new controversies arise. And as we move on to the next section, we'll see why this fluidity is a goldmine for those who trade in misinformation and half-truths. In Chase's time, the biggest worry might have been sensational newspapers or radio broadcasts. Today, the battlefield is massive. Social media, streaming platforms, podcasts, digital news outlets, and more. We're navigating an ocean of hashtags, memes, and live videos, all competing for our attention. That's exactly why language's manipulative power has been turbocharged. When a single misleading phrase goes viral in a matter of minutes, it can polarize communities across the globe before fact-checkers can step in. Take the phenomenon of fake news. The moment this phrase gained popularity, it became an all-purpose weapon. Some used it to call out genuine misinformation. Others deployed it to dismiss any report they disliked. The line between truth and falsehood blurred because the same words carried contradictory meanings depending on the user. In a similar vein, accusations surfaced against social media giants for algorithmically amplifying emotional content, especially posts that spark outrage. This is more than just a technical quirk. It's a system that nudges people to speak in hyperbole, to use stronger and sharper words that feed the fury. In other words, the digital landscape practically rewards manipulative language. Let's not ignore how quickly a trending hashtag can morph from a positive message into a toxic dogpile. The term cancel culture originally highlighted accountability for harmful actions. Then it exploded into a polarizing concept people weaponize against their critics. Now it's so divisive that some see it as a necessary social correction, while others view it as mob justice. The same two-word phrase has the power to rally an audience or scare them away. Steuart Chase might be astonished by how fast words evolve today. Or perhaps he'd nod in grim recognition. After all, this is the tyranny of words on a massive digital scale. What we see is that language can inflame or soothe, enrage or enlighten, all within the same day, depending on how and where it's used. The real question is whether we can learn to navigate this new wave of verbal manipulation without losing our sense of reality. And if you think that's a tall order, wait until you see how entire fields of study sometimes slip off the rails by obsessing over abstract language. It's tempting to think that the guardians of deep thought, philosophers, economists, sociologists, would be immune to the snares of language. But in many cases they might be some of the biggest offenders. Chase pointed out that when academic fields lean too heavily on abstract terminology, they risk drifting into a self-made labyrinth of words. Economists speak of market forces, the invisible hand, or rational agents. These phrases might have some explanatory power, but if you push for their real-world reference, the conversation can turn slippery. The same goes for philosophy. Entire treatises revolve around intangible concepts like justice, beauty, or the good life. These debates can be enlightening, but they often circle back to how each philosopher defines those words. Without pinning down their actual meaning in lived experience, philosophers can spend centuries rehashing the same argument under new labels. Meanwhile, the rest of the world struggles to find clarity on what these grand concepts look like in everyday life. A glaring example is the ongoing clash in social science. When researchers talk about systemic issues or oppressive structures, these terms might resonate deeply with those who see the world through that lens. Others dismiss them as mere slogans. In many heated academic conferences, some professors cling to specialized jargon that practically alienates the public. Critics argue that these fields are drowning in abstractions, untethered from the messy realities they claim to study. Rumors and speculations swirl about big universities dividing into rigid camps, each with its own jargon, rarely understanding the other side. Chase's warning here is blunt. If you can't ground your words in observable reality, you're at risk of spinning illusions. It's not that justice or oppression are meaningless, but they become dangerously hollow if we don't relate them to specific, concrete examples. And ironically, this confusion can bleed into public discourse. Journalists and politicians pick up those academic buzzwords, pour them into headlines, and watch as the public argues over them. All the while, the real-life referent remains murky. That's precisely the linguistic quicksand Chase wanted us to avoid. But there's hope. Chase, like other critics, laid out a possible way forward, one that demands a serious shift in how we use and perceive language. Stepping out of the linguistic cage doesn't require a total rejection of language. Instead, Chase advocated a more rigorous, almost scientific approach to words. He suggested we adopt something like a mathematical mindset. That doesn't mean sprinkling algebra into everyday talk. Rather, it means defining terms clearly, examining their relationships, and being precise. Just as a mathematician checks each step in an equation, we should watch how we move from one word to the next. Take everyday debates. If someone rails against the system, ask them to specify what exactly they mean by system. Is it the government, corporate power structures, societal norms, or something else? Or, if that question derails their argument, then maybe their entire notion of the system was too vague to be useful. Similarly, claims of growth in an economy sound wonderful, but what type of growth, for whom, and measured how? The more you drill down with specifics, the less room there is for illusions to breed. Chase even toyed with Ogden's Basic English, a simplified language system with around 850 words, designed to strip away unnecessary abstraction. Some found it intriguing. It forces you to say exactly what you mean with minimal fluff. But others criticized it for flattening the richness of human expression. Are we willing to lose nuance just for the sake of clarity? That's the paradox we face. Precision can keep us honest, but we also crave the depth and beauty of complex language. Perhaps the real answer lies in balance. We can keep our vibrant vocabulary, but only if we stay vigilant. The next time you hear sweeping statements about the mainstream media or the youth of today, treat them as placeholders until you see concrete details. If we fail to do so, we risk letting those phrases become emotional triggers that mask deeper truths. All of this might sound tedious, but Chase argued it's necessary for survival, both intellectual survival and, by extension, the survival of a society that doesn't tear itself apart over illusions. So, where does this journey leave us? According to Steuart Chase, the tyranny of words isn't an abstract threat reserved for philosophers and scholars. It's right here in our daily life, slipping into our conversations, fueling conflicts at family gatherings, and stoking fiery debates on social media. The cage is invisible because we rarely notice the bars. Yet those bars are made of the assumptions we cling to, the abstractions we recite, and the half-formed ideas we take for granted. Breaking free starts with noticing them, and maybe that's the heart of it all, awareness. Once you see how words can be twisted, inflated, or overused, you can't unsee it. It might even be unsettling at first, like watching the code in a video game you used to play. But if you push past that discomfort, you gain a sharper view of the world. You realize that behind every stirring speech or viral tweet is a set of assumptions, carefully packaged to spark a reaction. By dissecting those assumptions and asking, what do they really mean, you shift from passive listener to active decoder. Some of you might be thinking, what's the big deal? Words are just words. But when you look at history, from propaganda-driven wars to the crushing of entire communities under broad labels, you see that words can be more lethal than any weapon. They direct public sentiment and can galvanize injustice. And in everyday life, they push us to judge people or situations prematurely based on shallow slogans. The only way out of this is to get bold about challenging the language around us. If there's one thing you should take away from Chase's teachings, it's this: never settle for a mere symbol. Don't let someone else's words lock you into a narrow viewpoint. Ask for specifics. Demand context, and be ready to change your perspective when the map you were handed doesn't match the territory you're walking on. Because at the end of the day, the real territory is your life, your experiences, your relationships. Words are just guides, and sometimes very misleading ones. Thank you for sticking around for this deep exploration. If you find yourself rethinking everyday phrases, questioning the next headline you see, or pausing before you repeat a catchy slogan, then you're on the right track. That's exactly what Chase wanted, a world where people don't become puppets of their own vocabulary. Language can liberate if we use it wisely, or it can imprison if we forget to question it. The choice, surprisingly, is ours.